Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
Shopping delusions. She really should have been more careful about what she brought online to save herself. After all, this was hell's place. Psychology student Ella Riley lifted her face out of her hands, and she just stared at her large black smartphone for a moment. She was just grateful the evil little thing wasn't lighting up, vibrating, or receiving any messages whatsoever. She still flipped the phone over so the screen was touching the cheap yellow chipboard table that her and her housemates called a dining table. She wasn't a massive fan of it, but it was home, and they were all students, so it wasn't like they all sat round the dining table anyway. Ella, Henry, Abby, and Roman all tended to sit on the horrible bright blood-red sofas anyway for dinner, whilst they caught up about their days, what they were doing that evening, and any other news they had to share. Ella had to admit the only bad part of the dirty white terrace house in Hell's Place was the sofa. She really liked how large, open, and airy the house was, and it made her feel comfortable. Something she normally found impossible, even back home, and she had been living there for over 18 years. The wide open glass French doors that led out onto the tiny excuse of a garden on the far side of the living dining room always allowed a lot of bright golden sunlight in. Even when the weather wasn't the best outside, Ella always enjoyed pulling up a chair and just sitting in the warm, almost boiling sunlight whilst she read a paper or a new paperback she picked up on the way home. Ella was tempted to go and sit on the awful blood-red sofas because they were comfortable, warm, and at least she could relax down there. But the entire morning had been a chaotic blur, and she couldn't afford to relax right now. She had to focus and deal with the psychotic friend that was attacking her. The warming aromas of cloves, nutmeg, and mixed spice made Ella smile as she heard Roman bang around in the kitchen. She had always liked him. He was a great housemate, and she could see the edge of his loose black shirt in the kitchen from the dining table. "Has she stopped texting you yet?" Roman asked, the concern clear in his voice. Ella rolled her eyes as she looked down at her phone again. It was silent, for now. It had all started last night when she, Roman, and Abby had gotten home from a game of Dungeons and Dragons that Abby's boyfriend Mason had been running. Ella wasn't a massive fan of role-playing games, but it was a fun night filled with laughter, and some of the other players were brilliant. Then Philippa had started texting Ella. Ella had no idea why Abby liked Philippa so much, considering she made stuff up. She was extremely sensitive, and as far as Ella was concerned, someone could breathe on Philippa and she would start crying. It was ridiculous. She had tried to be friends with Philippa for Abby's sake, but after a while, Ella had avoided her like the plague. Philippa was nasty, jealous, and Ella was almost scared to talk to Abby when Philippa was in the room in case Philippa broke down in tears or something. The text messages were bad enough when Philippa learnt that Ella was living with Abby this academic year. It wasn't exactly an experience Ella ever wanted to repeat again. Last night it had. Ella, Roman, and Abby had been sitting on the awful sofas with large mugs of piping hot sweet hot chocolate when the texts started. Philippa had accused her of bullying, targeting, and trying to make her life a living hell. There was even a death threat. Ella didn't bother responding because this was Philippa. It was harmless and nothing was going to happen. It was just her being stupid, silly, and the woman seriously needed help. Ella had asked Abby about Philippa's mental health, and none of what Abby said had been surprising. Ella was hardly surprised Philippa was psychotic, had a personality disorder on top of that, and she suffered from bouts of depression at times. It would explain a lot of things she had seen over the past year that she had known Philippa. But last night was intense. "Here," Roman said, coming out of the kitchen with a boiling hot plate of spiced cookies. Ella smiled at Roman, wearing his black t-shirt, jogging bottoms, and socks. He smiled at her, and Ella was glad he was here today without any lectures. She really didn't want to be alone right now. "Thank you," Ella said, trying some of the cookie. The rich buttery texture and warming sensation of the spice was amazing, and some of the best cookies she had ever tasted. "These are great." "Thank you. I'm making them for Willow when she comes round." "She's a lucky girl," Ella said. Her phone buzzed again and again and again. "Why don't you block her?" Roman said, pulling a chair out from the table. "I have," Ella said. "My phone keeps unblocking her, and she keeps sending me more and more messages." "You're the psychology student," Roman said, smiling. "Do you know why she's doing this?" Ella laughed. She flat out hated the misconception that just because she did psychology, or clinical psychology, so mental health to be more precise, that she instantly knew why someone was doing something at a given point. Although Philippa did have a few mental health conditions, so Ella was willing to take a stab in the dark. "Abby told me that Philippa has psychosis, and part of psychotic symptoms are delusions. These are fixed, strongly held beliefs, and once these form, you cannot change them without professional help." Roman nodded, and he leant forward. Ella liked when people listened to her talk about her degree. "There is a specific type of delusion called persecutory delusions," Ella said. "These type of delusions focus on the individual believing that someone or a group of people are out to harm them or kill them. This would explain why Philippa seems obsessed with the idea that I'm targeting her, and that I want to hurt her badly." Roman nodded. "Fair enough. What are you going to do about it?" Ella's phone vibrated more and more and more, as even more messages came in from Philippa. She flipped over the phone, and noticed all these messages were death threats. Ella's heart rate increased. Her heart pounded in her chest. Sweat dripped down her back. "Oh," Roman said. "This isn't good. Is there anything we can do?" Ella went over to the side of the sofa, and took her laptop out of the small black rucksack she always kept there when she wasn't upstairs or at lectures. She opened it up on the dining room table, and searched up persecutory delusions. Normally she preferred to focus on depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions besides psychosis, but she needed to know a little bit more. Then her laptop flashed, banged, and vibrated. Her laptop took her to a web store with a white background and a large grid of products that seemed to be trying to sell her delusions of some kind. Ella laughed because this had to be the weirdest store she had ever seen on the internet. Each product had a large, colorful, and rather attractive image of a delusion. The first delusion in the top left-hand corner of the store had the image of a horse, because apparently, you could buy this delusion to make someone believe they were a horse. That was probably the most normal delusion on the store. Ella tried to click away from the store, but it wouldn't let her. "What the hell?" Roman asked as he moved his chair next to her. "What the hell is this store?" The laptop flashed again, and a cartoon man appeared on the screen wearing a Grim Reaper costume, and he was laughing at them for a moment. Until he started talking. "Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Delusion Store. A store where all your delusions can come true. If you want to be a horse, you can be. If you want to be a superhero, you can be. If you want to believe someone is trying to kill you, then you can. You can even gift these delusions to people. Just make sure you clearly say the name of the intended target of the delusion before you click Add to Basket." The cartoon man disappeared, and Ella just looked at Roman in utter horror. She had heard of weird things happening in Hell's Place. Normally, the weird things were limited to people dying, going missing, or people getting lost. She had never heard of this one before. Someone pounded on the front door. Ella's phone buzzed more and more and more as tens of messages flooded in. "Philippa's outside," Roman said, probably guessing. Ella shook her head. This wasn't what she needed, and she needed to fix this problem now, but she couldn't understand how a delusion was going to fix it. The pounding continued. Ella looked at each delusion. She didn't want Philippa to think she was a horse that wouldn't be useful, and Philippa might try to stomp her to death instead. Glass smashed and Philippa started laughing. "I'm going to kill her, Ella," Philippa shouted. "I'll go and try to slow her down," Roman said. Before Ella could protest, she saw Roman run off, and the door clicked open. The bastard woman had undone the lock through the smashed glass. Ella hated her. Ella kept scanning through the Delusions on sale. She hoped beyond hope that Hell's Place was trying to save her, but she doubted that was the case. Hell's Place didn't try to save anyone to the best of her knowledge. She heard Roman and Philippa arguing by the front door. She had to hurry. There was a delusion with a love heart image attached. It was meant to be a love delusion that led to obsession, protecting and kill any threats to the loved person. The last thing Ella wanted was for Philippa to be in love with her. She couldn't think of anything worse. Roman screamed. "She stabbed me," Roman shouted. Ella heard Roman fall with a thud, and she quickly searched the Delusions, but none of them jumped out at her. "There you are," Philippa said, wearing a long white dress with a blood-soaked knife in her hand. Ella clicked on a random delusion. Philippa Nelson, and she clicked Add to Cart. "Thank you for your purchase," her laptop said before it turned itself off. Ella watched Philippa carefully, as the psychotic woman smiled gently at her. Philippa's long white dress blew in a wind that wasn't there, and Philippa's long black hair flowed upwards for some reason. Then Philippa stood up perfectly straight, and she grinned at Ella. Ella wanted to scream or panic or do something, but she was too scared. Philippa came over to Ella and hugged her. "Hi, little sis," Philippa said, hugging Ella tighter and tighter. "Don't worry, little one. I saved you from the bad man. You're safe now, and I will never let anyone ever hurt you again." Ella tensed. She had no idea what delusion she had accidentally brought, but clearly it was something to do with having a protective older sister. Something Ella had never had, and never wanted to have. Her younger brothers were good enough siblings that she didn't want that to change. "He's my friend," Ella said by accident. Ella felt Philippa tense and sigh, but then Philippa kissed her on the forehead. "No, little sis," Philippa said. "He was a bad man that kidnapped you when you were 5. It's taken me so long to find you that I need to get you back to Daddy, so he can protect you and make sure you never ever run away again. Is that okay?" Ella's eyes widened as she realized that the delusion had mixed with reality. She had only ever had a single conversation with Abby about Philippa's parents. Her mom was dead, and her father was a horrible, abusive man that had done a lot of awful things to Philippa growing up. And the odd thing was, Philippa always wanted to go back to her father. Ella had studied it in her clinical psychology lectures enough times to know it was a tragic but normal trauma response. But like hell did she want to go with Philippa. Ella took a few steps back, but Philippa punched Ella in the side of the head. She collapsed to the ground, hitting her head on the cheap chipboard table as she went down. Her vision blurred, but Ella just focused on the cold, awful sound of Philippa laughing over and over, as Ella was dragged by the ankles out of the house and into Philippa's smelly little car. And that was when her life changed forever. It took 2 long years for anyone to find Ella, because everyone had assumed that Philippa had left Hell's Place, but she hadn't. Her and her father had bought a small terrace house just a few months before, so Ella had been stored, protected and loved there whilst chained to a bed in the basement for 2 long years. Ella had no real idea what had changed in the 2 years, and why people had suddenly found her. Even Philippa and her father had no idea, because they were just as careful as always. One fit, perfectly healthy journalist without any history of heart attack in his family had argued in the Kent University newspaper that Hell's Place had decided to tell the police somehow. But he had died of a heart attack the day after the story had come out. Ella supposed it was possible. Roman was dead, Abby and Henry had fallen in love and moved out of Hell's Place, and Ella was still there in Hell's Place finishing off her master's. She sat at the cheap chipboard dining table writing out her dissertation, and she couldn't help but feel like there was someone standing outside the large French doors that led out into the small excuse of a garden. She looked round, and she could have sworn she had seen a shadowy man standing there in all black, and that he waved at her. She blinked and he was gone. But Ella just smiled because that was the oddly wonderful thing about living in Hell's Place. It was weird, crazy, and full of delusions. No one could be sure if what they believed truly was fact or fiction or pure delusion.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested, and you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel or on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteleyverse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.